We don't ever get to read from the book of Job, or at least rarely. I know, it's Mark's favorite book. He's going back going like this. Mark has shared that with me. I should have let you preach today. Oh, uh-oh. Go for it. Oh, I see. Okay. Mark has told me for years that this is one of his favorite books. It would appear on the surface that it is a book of terrible tragedy. You know the story? Kind of. When you go home today, I want you to pick up the Bible and read it. Job starts out as a very prosperous man. Huge bank account, lots of property, fabulous family. And the devil challenges God to see how faithful Job is. And so God causes all sorts of terrible things to happen. And I suppose that's where we all get this notion in this world that God causes awful things to happen. But I don't believe that. I believe this is a story for our understanding of who God really is. And I don't believe he's a God who causes tragedy. Let me tell you why. As all these things happen to Job, his kids die one by one. His bank account is depleted. He loses his property, his means of an income, everything. And then even he himself is so stricken that he's in great pain. The image is of a man just broken, absolutely broken. And even his friends, who have tried through all of this to shore him up, his friends are finally saying, "Jeepers, throw in the towel." Job won't throw in the towel. Even though his world seems to be tumbling in on top of him, he won't give up. He will not give up. You ever felt like your whole world's fallen in on top of you? Yeah? Sometimes it happens when there's a loss in your life, a loss of a job, a loss of a spouse. Sometimes it's when your kids aren't doing what you want them to do. They're going in a direction that you would never have them go. You've all been there. You've all felt that way, I'm sure, because I know I have. It just feels like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. And the world around you just is collapsing. How in heaven's name do you make it? How did Job make it? How could he say these words? Listen to them. And I'm going to make sure you understand the punctuation in them, because I think that's really important. Oh, that my words were written down! Exclamation mark. Oh, that they were inscribed in a book! Exclamation mark. Oh, that with an iron pen and with lead they were engraved on a rock forever! Exclamation mark. For I know that my Redeemer lives, and that at the last he will stand upon the earth, and after my skin has been thus destroyed, then in my flesh I shall see God, then in my whom I shall see on my side, and my eyes shall behold, and not another. Imagine, in the midst of all of that tragedy, being able to sort of shout with joy, I wish what I'm about to say could be written down. Oh, and not just written down, and not just in a book, but engraved on a rock so all generations yet to come will be able to know what I felt and thought and said. Whoa! If you were that downtrodden, if you had lost everything, your family, your work, your friends, even your own health, could you with such excitement say those words? Write them down. Write them down. Write them so the whole world can see. And you'd almost expect at that point to have him say, Screw it! But that isn't what he said. He said, I know that my Redeemer lives. Now you and I, on the other side of the Old Testament, knowing the New Testament, read into that word, Redeemer, the word Jesus, don't we? I bet all of you went there. I know that my Redeemer lives. That's not quite what Job meant. When Job said those words, what he was talking about was a very technical legal term. In his world, a redeemer was usually a family member or a close friend who would sort of bail you out of a bad situation, who would stand up for you and defend you against all these aspects of the world that were closing in on you. That was the Redeemer, the one who would come to lend you aid and pick you up and defend you when no one else would or could. Who's he calling on to come and do that? But the very one who seems to be inflicting all this crap on him. God. He says that that Redeemer will stand with him and live. Even after his flesh is gone, he's going to be able to see his Redeemer standing not way off there, but right here, beside him. Don't miss that. Then in my flesh I shall see God, whom I shall see on my side. Not the one hurting, but the one defending me, saving me. Now you and I hear Jesus when we read this text. And part of that has to do with the other time in the church we get to read from the book of Job, and that has to do with funerals, right? How many of you have heard this text read at a funeral? I know that my Redeemer lives. Well, it's also very famous because there is a guy named Handel who wrote a whole piece, oratorio, is that what it's called? I'm looking at my musicians. Handel's Messiah, you know what it is. And one of the songs in there is, I know that my Redeemer lives. And you and I read Jesus in there. And I'm not going to tell you not to. Because we do live on the other side of the cross. And we do believe in salvation. We do believe in a Redeemer who comes to stand by our side through thick and thin. And his name is Jesus. Hold that and go with me to the New Testament text, which is really a bit bizarre. You've got a bunch of Sadducees. And by the way, there is a reason that our text said the Sadducees who do not believe in the resurrection. There's a reason that's in there. You see, and now I'm going to reveal one of my little techniques on how to remember the difference between the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Who believes in the resurrection? The Pharisees do, and the Sadducees don't. That's why they're sad, you see. That's a groaner, isn't it? Okay, but there's a reason that our text today tells us that the Sadducees are in fact the ones who don't believe in a resurrection. Because they try to trap Jesus with this dumb question. Well, let me tell you a little story. There was this guy, or this woman that was married to this guy, and they had no kids. But he died. Now, in that culture, it was customary and expected that the brothers would then take over for the man who died and give that woman children. Hopefully a boy. Well, she marries the second one, the second brother, no kids, he dies. Third one, same thing. All 7 of them, same thing. This is one bride for 7 brothers. I know that the musical is 7 brides for 7 brothers, but this is one bride for 7 brothers and no kids. Now, here's the dumb question. Now, in the resurrection, whose wife is she going to be? Really? You don't believe in the resurrection. You're Sadducees, and you're asking this question? Really? But they ask it to trap Jesus. Jesus goes on to say, look, in the resurrection, which, by the way, I believe in, you don't marry or give in marriage or any blah, 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 blah. It goes on and on to say that, this is a crazy question. It's not going to matter. And by the way, he says to them, you really ought to believe in the resurrection. Because, remember Moses and the burning bush? Yeah. Okay. Well, who was it that Moses was talking to? I am. That's the name that God gave in the burning bush. I am. I am who? I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And in the Hebrew, the tense of those words is in the present. It's not past. It's not saying, I'm the God of the former Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am the God of the living Abraham, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So, by the way, you don't believe in the resurrection? Really, you ought to go back and look at your own stories and read the words carefully. That's sort of what Jesus was saying. You don't believe in a resurrection? Think again. Think again. You don't believe there's a Redeemer who will stand by your side when the whole world begins to fall around you? We're about on the anniversary of Sandy Hook, Connecticut. Remember that one? Kids all got shot in the classroom. The memorial of Kristallnacht in Berlin, when the Nazis began the Jewish elimination. How many of you fought in a war, knew someone who did fight in a war? Maybe lost somebody, a veteran. How many of you have lost a loved one, period? A spouse, a brother, sister. How many of you have faced terrible illnesses in your life or in your family? How many of you ever lost a job? It feels like the whole world is caving in on you. How do you say with Job, I know that my Redeemer lives? We have something to learn from him about who that Redeemer is. Who is the one that will stand by your side even when the world is fallen apart around you? It's none other than the one who had this little argument with the Sadducees over whose wife would she be. And is there life beyond death? And Jesus tells us, yeah, there is. There is, and it will be greater and more unimaginable than you can fathom. The truth in life is God does not cause bad things to happen. It feels like that sometimes. But when bad things happen, do you know where he is? He's the Redeemer. He's the one who is standing by your side, now and forever. Is there anything that can ever change that? We, with Job, ought to be yelling and screaming with great big exclamation marks, I know that my Redeemer lives. Write it on a rock so that all generations for all time will remember and learn that the one I love will come and save me. You and I know his name, Jesus. We rejoice today, not just on Easter Sunday. Oh, it's fun and great to believe in the resurrection on Easter Sunday, isn't it? It's so cool. All the flowers, all the balloons, all the white, all the bright, everything. But what about when the world is falling around you? That same resurrection is true. And that same God who came to redeem Job comes to redeem you. And his name is Jesus.